It is time for our cash tag segment. I'm still joined by the co-host of Fast Market, Kevin Hinks, and joining me in studio is Miss Jenny Horn, TD Ameritrade Network contributor. We also like to welcome in the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, Mr. Landon Swan. All righty, let's talk some athleisure here, Jenny. Some fun names here. We're talking Nike, we're talking Lululemon, and believe it or not, I see these two companies as legitimate competitors now, as crazy as that is to see as you look back 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago maybe, for Lululemon, how far they've come.
Absolutely, and I actually think us being in sweatpants so much over the last year sort of accelerated this trend, because Lulu, of course, stood to benefit pretty much the most from this athleisure trend, which has only expedited its success over the last year. Now, Lulu reported pretty blowout first quarter earnings last Thursday, but they have underperformed Nike over the last 12 months. However, of course, I'm a little biased. I love both these names, but Lulu particularly. So I had to go through and find some of their advantages, because from a long-term perspective, things are a little bit different here. Lulu, well, Nike has made a huge push into digital, of course, which we talk about all the time. They're still actually lagging Lululemon. So they said on their earnings call back in March, Nike, that they expect to have 35% of their total business be derived from their digital sales, with long-term expectations to be about 50%. Now, Lulu has already done this, which is pretty, fascinating when you think about, Lulu compared to Nike in terms of scale. Now, another thing is Lulu rarely sells marked down items, which is interesting because it's led to sort of this premium branding. Now, Nike typically relies on some of their wholesalers, like a Dick's Sporting Goods or a Foot Locker. But because Lulu sells most of its products or direct products at full prices, it actually commands a higher gross margin, which has led to some of this pricing power. So analysts like this because although, of course, Nike is the giant with a $210 billion market cap, Lulu has lots of long-term growth prospects that make it has a runway for growth in terms of from an analyst perspective. Now on social media today, I have to say it pains me, but for some reason Nike is still a little bit more beloved than Lululemon, which brings me to our first tweet of the day, which says, Nike is already becoming a timeless brand in fashion, and Lululemon could soon share that title as well. So I have to say, actually, in Nike's defense, I think it already is a timeless brand in fashion. I think that it has this sort of power over its consumers to be a very well-established brand. So I actually think that this day has already come for Nike, but Lulu, of course, like you mentioned, Alex, is coming up on that as well. And our next tweet also talks about this degree of branding, both of these being such powerful brands, which our next tweet says, a durable brand is so valuable in the stock market. There's endless examples of companies who trade at a premium because they are the Kleenex of their industries. Examples being Lulu, Crocs, Nike, and Tesla. So, Landon, I am very curious to know how your data compares Nike and Lululemon, because I am, of course, biased, but today Twitter showed me that Nike might be the favorite right now.
Yeah, you know what? I tell you what, I'm biased as well. I love Lulu. I own a ton of it, and Nike for me is not something it's like a go-to must-have. If they have the product I want and it looks better, I might buy it. But Lulu is just, the quality is fantastic. But putting personal preferences aside, if you look at the data, one of the things we like to do is, on this, it's the scatter plot that we have, or the outlier chart. When you look at purchase intent versus happiness, what we can see is actually Lulu's fallen off a little bit over the last quarter, whereas Nike's holding or gaining just a bit. And then on the happiness, which is really, kind of what you mentioned there, Jenny, is sort of brand loyalty. You can see that Lulu is much higher. It is far to the left, which means that that's the purchase intent angle. So it's, the purchase intent's dropped, but the happiness is huge. So Nike's at 62% happy. Lululemon mentions are at 76% happy. So big difference between the two. I think that Lulu's has and is growing a more loyal fan base, but Nike's brand is incredibly strong. I mean, you can't argue that. They're iconic, obviously. But right now, it looks like Nike's sort of holding a little bit more on purchase intent, whereas maybe with Lulu, people, they over the last year, they were buying more comfortable clothes, more athleisure type stuff. And now as people are starting to go out more, you can't wear 2019 wardrobes. So you got to go stock up and, you're buying different things. And maybe that's just not Lulu.
Landon, with all due respect to Jenny Horn and her knowledge of fashion, there's more volatility in Nike fashion than there is in Lululemon, right? If you walk into a Lululemon store right now, do you say, is this the 2021 black yoga pant, or is this the 2020 black yoga pant, and they look very similar. So that's why Lululemon probably doesn't have to mark down last year's models, because they're black yoga pants. And how much do they change? Nike, on the other hand, their brands really are constantly changing, and that is why. But the quality around Lululemon and its focus more on women, not 100% on women, but more on women, probably leads to the happiness data and the overall quality of their merchandise. Nike, they're the behemoth, right? They are in, there's nothing that they're not in at all different levels of quality and pricing. You can buy a $40 running shoe, you can buy a $140 running shoe in Nike. So I think that Lululemon is the ultimate growth athleisure brand. But Landon, correct me where I'm wrong, Nike is just, they're the behemoth in this industry.
Yeah, they're huge. I mean, one of the things that you hit on that I really liked was the fact that Nike's got a lot more volatility when it comes to perceived quality, or I guess hype around products. Lulu's Lulu, right? You buy comfortable stuff. You don't care what year it is or whose name is on it. But one of the things that we looked at was the Jordan brand versus the Nike brand. What's interesting, that's not on this chart right now, but the Jordan brand's down about, mentions are down about it's 18% quarter over quarter, whereas the Nike brand's up about 23% quarter over quarter. So there's like a shift going from Jordan brand, and I think it's losing a little bit of its luster. It had the Last Dance show that was the documentary. I think that got a lot of people going on it. But this chart is interesting because it's people talking about buying online. And even though I think that Lulu and Nike are both growing very quickly, Nike's mentions of people talking about buying online are up far more than Lulu's, and I think it's because of the fact that they have product drops, right? So when a new sneaker comes out on their sneakers app, people are more excited about that, and they talk about it, and it's an event, as opposed to Lulu, like you said, there's no 2022 yoga pant black dropping, right? It's just the next thing. It's always high quality. So it's pretty interesting to see like I guess the consumer experience and the consumer just excitement around the different things that Nike does. I would just guess that it's got to be harder to keep up with. They've always got to be having that next thing that's cool, whereas Lulu just continues to pump out very high quality products.
Yeah, it's been impressive to watch, Landon, how Lulu, in the fact that it's grown so tremendously, but maintaining that perception of quality as it scales out has been incredible. But also, Nike has been this superstar, flashy kind of company for decades now, so can't discount them either. I want to ask you a question a little bit differently, though. Lulu's trying to branch out beyond just apparel. Of course, they expanded to a little bit more menswear, but the acquisition of Mira and getting into more of this ecosystem of fitness as the world kind of finds new ways to work out. Nike's been doing this for a long time as well, through Nike Run Club and some of their partnerships they have with other brands. How is that side of Lulu shaping up, and are they a real competitor in that space?
So I think that the fact that they've built this brand loyalty and the perceived quality, not just perceived, I think it is very high quality, but the fact that their consumers perceive their products to be very high quality is going to help them, because they can put a Lulu stamp on something in the future and people are going to assume it's very high quality. So when they go and branch out, that's going to be a huge advantage for them. Now, you talked about Mira. This is interesting. To me, we looked at the data on Mira. That is actually it seems like one of these, like, the Roombas of products, because everyone wants to buy it for someone else as a gift. There was a huge spike in Christmas for the Mira brand, and then it actually kind of fell off and reverted back to normal. So Mira, I'm not sure if that's going to take off. I think it's kind of a cool little extra thing that they're doing. We'll see. But again, it looks like it's the gift of products as opposed to the one you're going to go buy for yourself, sort of like the Roomba that iRobot has.
Landon, as we kind of sum things up here, is this a space where you like both of these names, one a little bit more than the other? We asked this question of Andy yesterday with Walmart and Target. He really loved Target, but didn't mean he didn't like Walmart.
Right, yeah. So, just looking at the stock chart, you guys had it up earlier. Nike's been pretty flat for 6 or 7 months. Lulu's been flat for even longer, about a year. I mean, they've been bouncing around in sort of a range. I think that either one of these, if they have a 5, 10, maybe 15% sell-off ahead of earnings, which is Nike, I think, is maybe 3 weeks away. Lulu's not till September. But if you get a 10 or 15% just drop in these, I think they're good buying opportunities. They're both very strong companies long term. Even though the PE ratios are getting high, I mean, in this market, Nike at 62 or whatever it is, PE ratio isn't insane. Lulu is at 73, so I guess you could call Nike the safer investment, but it's wild what valuations are looking like right now. But between the two, yeah, I like them both. Personally, I think Lulu's a little bit stronger. I think that they have more growth potential, and because of that brand loyalty, they're going to be able to leverage that into a lot of different things that they do. But in either one of them on a 10 or 15% dip, I'm a buyer.
Well said, Landon. Great summary here, and we'll look forward to watching these names. Maybe we'll get the opportunity with a bit of a sell-off coming up. But the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, Landon Swan, it's always a pleasure. Look forward to talking to you again soon. Jenny, I think